Welcome everyone to the Regional Housing Council meeting for July 28th. I hope everyone's having a wonderful summer. I know some of us have had a chance for vacations or time away in the last month, so that's great, and I'm glad people are having a chance to do that. Let's go ahead and do some introductions for the record. So let's start in Lacey. Carolyn, can you introduce who's here from your crew tonight?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to start with the fabulous Kelly Adams, who's been wonderful support for this organization. Move to Council Member Lenny Greenstein, who serves as our alternate to this group. And then we have our head of our planning and economic development extraordinaire, Rick Walk. Did I miss anybody? I think we got it all.
Okay, welcome, Lacey. Tumwater, Michael, can you introduce your folks?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Jim. Michael Althauser, City of Tumwater, joined by John Doan, our City Administrator, and Brad Medjid from our Planning Department.
Welcome. Thank you, Lacey. So Thurston County.
Sorry. I am also joined by Councilmember Joan Cathy, who I thought had a conflict today. So I apologize, Joan. I didn't see you join us.
Okay.
Welcome, Joan.
Thanks.
Okay. So then let's go to Thurston County. Carolina, tell us who's here.
Okay, Carolina Mejia, Thurston County Commissioner. Today we have with us Ramiro Chavez, our county manager. We also have Tom Webster and Keely Marino, as well as Jacinda Sturgis.
Okay. Welcome,
Yay.
Thurston County. Let's see, do we see anyone from Yelm? I don't think so. So then for Olympia, I'm Jim Cooper, City Council member. We have Council member Danny Madrone. We have Assistant City Manager Keith Staley. And our housing, our home fund, I don't even know, what is your title these days, Carrie? Everything housing from the City of Olympia, Carrie Retland. So, did I miss anyone? Has everyone been introduced? What is the title, Carrie? Trivia tonight. Stump Carrie.
Home fund manager and other duties as assigned.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, is everyone okay with the agenda we have in front of us?
If I could just request that we move Keely to the very start, since she has to leave at 4:30. Let that be the first thing that we do after approving the agenda.
Okay, well, I have one person for public comment and the minutes are all I have before her. So I think that will be okay. Is that okay, Keely? Okay.
Okay, well, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get there in just a minute. So.
All right, move to approve then.
I'll take a second since there's a motion now. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have an agenda. And I'm okay with consensus on agendas. So feel free if you want either to just give a nod or make a motion. That's just fine. Okay, so then we have public comment. I have one person signed up and that is Jeff Lawyer. Kelly, can you promote Jeff so we can hear him?
Yes, it'll be just one moment, Chair Cooper.
Okay.
While Mr. Lawyer is promoted to panelist, I wanted to note that James Madison has his hand up.
Okay. So if James is wishing to comment, we can probably fit two in as long as folks are quick, but so we can accommodate Keely's schedule. So Jeff, can you hear us? You should be able to unmute now. I'll give you about 2 minutes, but I'd love it if you kept it concise. You might need to unmute yourself, Jeff.
I apologize.
There you go. We have you.
Okay.
And we have your materials, so just so you know.
Great, so I'll make it brief. And for many of you, this is a repeat, so I will make it extremely brief. And I'm Jeff Lawyer. I live in unincorporated Thurston County, and there's many of us who are not proud to live in a community where many of our people have to live in tents, so we're looking for alternatives. And I'd like to introduce you to a project that we're calling Better Than a Tent. It's led by the United Churches of Olympia. And we are involving several other faith communities and community organizations, and the city of Olympia is helping us out as well. Our goal is to build these primitive micro shelters that are about, the basic structure is about 8 feet by 8 feet, made of plywood and lumber. And we're putting them in different houseless encampments in the area, trying to get people out of the tents so that they can be away from the rats, the snow, and the rain. Last year, we built and delivered 9 of them to a site known as Nickerson, and they lasted very well throughout the winter. I went and audited them last week, and they're holding up very well. People are thrilled to have them. But we still have many people in the area living in tents, and so we're hoping to build 50 more of those this summer and distribute those over the summer and winter to various locations throughout the county. We would like to work with the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, and other community organizations to accomplish this goal. So we're asking people to help donate funds, materials, and labor if they can. And if they're at all interested in the project and helping out, please contact me, jeff.lawyer@gmail.com. I didn't time that, but I hope it was in the time.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Kelly, if you can bring James in, we'll add them as public comment.
I have a question. You mentioned that you had documents for Mr. Lur. I didn't receive any. I'm not sure if that was just me.
So I think we all got them from Kelly this afternoon. If you didn't, reach out to her and she can send them again.
Chair Cooper, I sent them directly to you, sir, and then I thought that we would send those out with the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought everyone was on that list. My bad. So, okay, yeah, so they'll come out. Kelly will we'll get them out to us. Thanks for asking, Carolina. Okay, James, you have about 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to say, introduce myself and say how much I appreciate the work you guys are doing. I've been looking at it and having a chance and an opportunity to speak to many of you actually one-on-one, which has been great. And I really appreciate that. Finally going to get to meet Carolina in person tomorrow. Would like to speak to you, Jim, at some point in the near future. I got a couple emails in asking for a little time. I understand you're super busy and just got back. Everyone is. Just wanted to actually support the work you're doing even more fully somehow. It was suggested to maybe try to join the affordable housing team, which I'd like to work group, which I'd like to participate with, as well as more participating in here, and just have a chance to talk to a few more of you at more length. I did speak with Kim Conrad at length, as well as Keely and Ty Mesner and Carolina as well, and had a good chance to talk to Tom. So I'm trying to get up to speed. I appreciate the work you're doing. And it was just, breaks my heart like it does yours to have to, out of $8 million worth of requests, only be able to give out $2.5 million. So I'm looking to see the bigger focus on how we can actually pull in the rest of the funds to do the job, and also have you all get from you what your picture is of the bigger picture getting done. Like, what is the bigger project, and how do we get the services plus the housing actually accomplished? How much does it take to get these 1,000 or so people in this local area covered, and as well as feed into the state's vision and purpose and the juice that they actually have through Seattle and then through Olympia, that we can, be a model for the other couple of states that are super hard hit, as well as the rest of the country. So I'm here to support you all in that vision and doing even more than you're necessarily having to do on this job, which you're doing really great. And then the job is this big. So I appreciate, again, the efforts. And I also think we can kind of look at what it looks like to name the rest of the project and to get that funding through the federal government and some of the private corporate players that are in the national space to participate in this together. And it was great to be able to work with the city and the county and the port to work on the micro shelter project that Jeff Lawyer helped initiate, to get some taste of what that looks like as a public-private partnership. So I got a lot of good ideas I'd like to contribute, and I look forward to speaking to the rest of you as you wish. So thank you so much for your time today, and I love listening, and I'll take notes and see what else you guys are doing. So thanks again.
Thank you, James. And just for my benefit, if you could put your email back on the top of the pile for me, I'll make sure to look for it and get back to you this weekend. Okay, any comments on the public comment before we move on? Just like to thank folks for coming out and being supportive and having ideas, because that's how we're getting new innovative things happening on the ground. So thank you for that. Okay, so that takes us to the approval of the minutes from our June meeting. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes from the June meeting.
Second.
Okay, I've been moved and seconded. Are there any amendments or clarifications? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Tom and Keely, give us an update on Community Solutions.
Great. So I'll launch right in. Following the Regional Housing Council meeting from July, as per the request of the Regional Housing Council, I reached out to Community Solutions in order to get an example of the agreement or the agreement that we would be signing. So we did receive an agreement. It is an example. It is a model. It is not our agreement. It will be specific to us. And in that way, what that means is Providence St. Peter's Hospital, or Providence St. Peter's, or Providence, I don't know, is the fiscal sponsor of this effort. So in the agreement that we received, it mentions a fee that would be paid out by the signer of the agreement. That signer would be, there would be a clause in our agreement that would designate the fiscal responsibility to Providence. So we'll have, as soon as we send them our just the information around Thurston County and who's bottom lining it, we'll get our agreement, and that distinction will be made. So Providence will be the fiscal sponsor. Thurston County would be the signer of the agreement in order to see to the duties and the scope of work as laid out in the agreement. So in the agreement, looking down, I am no lawyer, but I have seen a number of contracts, and the language in the services agreement is pretty standard at the top of the agreement. There's elements of this agreement that would not be unfamiliar: scope of services, term of agreement, termination, project officers, confidentiality, those types of things at the head of this document. Coming down to our I'm looking at it right now, sorry. The identification of who the client shall be, which would be Thurston County in this instance. Following that, it does go into great detail about the scope of services and what we'd be doing. So Tom and I met with Garen Noren, I believe, of Community Solutions in the middle of July in order to answer some of the questions we have and be taken step by step through what does this look like, what are we stepping into, and what is expected of us. In the scope of services, it is, and the duties that we would be, like our portion of how we would be moving forward with Community Solutions would be, and how they will step and work alongside of us will be thus. So Community Solutions, once the document is signed, this agreement is signed, there's an auto renewal. The example document agreement has an auto renewal every 12 months on into 2025. So I'm not sure. I did speak with a staff member from Community Solutions this morning. I'm not sure if it's a 5-year agreement that we'd be signing, but it's annually renewable. There are Community Solutions, what some of their responsibilities is that they would be offering the following services available to us as an entity engaging with Community Solutions, which are 2 national learning sessions. So every 6 months, our team, which I will get to in a moment, will travel or visit virtually 2 learning sessions. So these learning sessions are with a cohort. So Thurston County would be joining a cohort of other communities throughout the United States that are engaging with Community Solutions at the same time. And ostensibly we would be peers. So we would be meeting to network together and to go through this learning process together and have that as a resource. And that process would be guided by Community Solutions. And then, following that, there are 2 what they call action cycles. Action cycles are a 6-month period between learning sessions. And throughout those action cycles, there are a number of activities. There's coaching, coming up with strategies, structured peer learning trainings, access to just being able to ask them questions on technical assistance, engaging in looking at experimental interventions, access to experts at the federal level, et cetera. So that's what that each six months period between those learning sessions would include those activities. There would be a data capacity building, performance management infrastructure. So what that means is, as we've talked about before, data is a big part of the community solutions process. So they would be working actively with us to develop our capacity and our skills as a system in order to cultivate real-time quality data that we will use to drive decisions towards a functional zero type of end, towards a particular subpopulation within our homeless crisis response system. We will be setting goals with them, and we'll just continue on in that fashion for as long as we wish as a community, as an agency, to stay engaged. Our obligations are to engage and to engage fully. So they state in the agreement that they expect every community that engages with community solutions do so both feet in order for it to be more effective. Our broad commitments, according to the agreement, would be to end chronic and/or veteran homelessness. So identifying which of those populations we want to focus on initially. That will be aided and abetted by all of the technical assistance and the support and the learning sessions that we engage in. And ending homelessness is according to their functional zero standard. So functional zero is a term of art around how as many people who may enter homelessness in a given period of time, there are equal opportunities to enter into a housing project. So that would be what functional zero means. We are also obligated to pursue racial equity, which our Regional Housing Council and our Homeless Crisis Response System have also prioritized. So that's in alignment with us. And then to continuously improve the work that we're working on. So just being diligent about engaging with this process. The criteria for us to participate in Built for Zero, according to the agreement, is to identify an approach to the work of ending homelessness. So developing a continuously improved coordination system, achieve the measures that we set out for reduction of number of people experiencing homelessness. They have listed as criteria to bring joy and celebration, which I'm sure I'm all for that. And then to contribute with our peers. So with our cohort, we would commit to being engaged with them. In terms of the data and what is required for data, we're to obtain quality data. So I'll go over the team members. Our lead in the data, our data lead would be engaging with Built for Zero Community Solutions to identify gaps in terms of quality of data, maintaining that quality data, getting trained in all sorts of, like Tableau is one of the things that our data person would be trained on, and then to be reporting aggregate data on a monthly basis so that we can keep tabs on how we're doing. And that data, that aggregate data, we agree to share. So aggregate, of course, no identifying information, just general numbers, which include racial equity progress. And then the team. So there's also a requirement that we put together a team. I have listed, I'll just read off the labels of the team leads, and I'll then pull up a document I just threw together to show you what we're thinking so far. So at the top is the improvement team lead, and this is essentially the person who's going to be working the closest with community solutions on a regular basis throughout this process. A data lead, our local sponsor or senior leader. So this is somebody that's kind of at the senior leader decision-making level who is engaging in this process as well. Public-private funding lead, emergency response lead. So the emergency response lead is a newer role, and that actually came up because of COVID-19. They realized that they needed someone to be taking the lead in those activities. And then there's basically a stakeholder team. So I will pull up really quickly this document. So give me one moment. Thank you for your patience. It doesn't get easier. Zoom never gets easier. Okay. It's not even that interesting of a document. Sorry you have to wait so long. Okay, so these are the individuals that we've identified as our team so far. So I've been identified as the improvement lead, so I would be engaging directly with Community Solutions on a regular basis. And then we have a data lead, so that would be Ariel Benson from our office. She already is our identified data person for our office, so she would take on that role. Our senior leader has been identified and agreed. Shelley Slaughter will be taking on the senior leader position. At this point, the reason why there's 4 of them that are darkened, those are the team members that are identified as being the most key. Those that are not bold are those that are really important, but that what they want us to focus on is building those first 4. So the key improvers team members are stakeholders, people with lived experience, folks that are working in the system already that will be doing the work towards improving or meeting the goals of Built for Zero. And then for the private public funding lead, Tom is suggested as a public funding lead, and we have yet to identify someone from the private sector. And then emergency response lead, I just put my name in there, but it doesn't have to be me for sure. So that's our team so far, who we've identified to fulfill those roles. We have gotten some clarification also fiscally from Providence. So Providence, when we spoke with Community Solutions, we asked, well, how long do communities stay engaged? And they stated that, the shortest period of time a community has stayed engaged is about 4 years, 4 or 5 years. So this is the long haul. This is a very lengthy commitment. And then with the travel, like who would be covering the travel expenses? So we reached out to Providence, and Providence has stated that they will remain in contract relationship with Community Solutions for as long as we stay engaged. So as long as we have a team that's actively working with Community Solutions and we're doing the work, they're going to continue paying that contract and being the fiscal agent of sponsor of that project. And if admissible or if permissible, also be covering the travel costs for the twice yearly learning sessions. So that's what I have so far, and I'm open to questions.
Okay. Lenny, go ahead.
Sure. So just curious, are there any examples of communities where this process has actually had an impact on their homeless situation?
Yes, absolutely. On their website, they have a huge long list of all of the communities that are engaged with their process, some of which are delineated as already having solved homelessness for certain subpopulations. Primarily, those are veteran populations. I don't have those communities memorized off the top of my head, but they're super easy to find. We also are not, we're unique-ish because we're a member of the Bounds of State Continuum of Care. So we are one of the 30, as you all know, one of the 34 counties under the Bounds of State. And so that makes it a little bit different. Many of the other communities, many of the other communities are their own continuum of care. However, Denver or Colorado, the entire Bounds of State is engaged with Built for Zero at this time. So they do have experience working with Bounds of States, so that's good for us. But I definitely encourage you to check out that website.
Chair Cooper.
Keith, go ahead.
Just to add to that, Councilmember Greenstein, City of Bakersfield, California, and the County of San Diego both have achieved 0 for single adult population. So, there's some pretty impressive results out there. So I'm really excited and thankful to Keely and to Romero and to the commission for moving forward with this. I know it's a huge commitment, and we're here to support and to help and to make this successful, because I think this is really the kind of work that we're going to need to do in order to be successful. So thank you for that. This is a great step forward for us.
Well, and Keely, is there still an opportunity for the jurisdictions individually to get a presentation from Community Solutions if they haven't done that? Because that was really beneficial for Olympia.
I would have to check with Community Solutions because it isn't free. So that would be a conversation between them and Providence, I believe.
Okay, cool.
I do have the presentation that they present that I'm happy to share, which is a
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because that shows some of the
So-
trend lines and stuff. So that would be good to send to the group.
Yeah.
Okay,
Glad to
good
do that.
question, Lenny. Other questions? Okay, well, a body of work that's very connected to what we're doing. And so I'm sure as we move along, we'll figure out how the RHC will interface with that work as well. Do you think, before you run, Keely, because we're going to talk about our retreat, is the timing such that Community Solutions might be part of that, or will we be too early or too late?
So so many parallel processes are happening that will all be impacted by Community Solutions at some point. Our cohort will begin on the first weekend of November.
Okay.
So we will not be engaging in any Community Solutions activities except outside of some orientation until that point. That's when our 6-month activity cycle begins.
Okay. Well, maybe just let them know that a month before that, we will probably have a retreat, and if there's any pre-work that they suggest we work on, the timing might be helpful. So,
Yeah.
okay. Anything else from the group on that, or can we let Keely go? Okay, Keely, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so the next item is future retreat planning. And so, Tom, can you give a quick update on that conversation?
Yes, good evening. A very quick update. So at the last meeting, we talked about engaging with the Housing Action Team and their executive leadership on retreat planning and planning for something for this fall. So Keely did reach out to all the members of the Housing Action Team executive leadership. So those are the chairs of the various sub-teams. So that would be the Affordable Housing Team, the Homeless Housing Hub, the Rental Housing Work Group, and the Senior Housing Work Group, to ask if those leaders would be interested in engaging. We got an enthusiastic yes from folks saying they would be very happy and excited to engage with the RHC in planning a retreat and having that conversation. So that's as far as kind of that interaction has gone. So I think want to kind of have more discussion with this group on kind of next steps to move that forward. But there was real interest from the HAT executive leadership on moving forward with discussions and planning.
Okay. Well, so then if, so what we talked about with Carolina and I at the agenda setting meeting was to start working to get a date and a facilitator. And then Carolina and Tom and Keely and I will engage with those other chairs to bring back an agenda for a retreat, or at least the high level content or sections that we need to talk about. So I wanted to provide a little bit of space. So thinking late September, early October is really good timeline with the RFP process and some of that stuff. It's a good quiet moment, or a quieter moment, if you will, in the annual calendar. And so if folks are okay, we'll get a poll of some kind out with some dates. And then we've asked for both, we have 2 consultants that we've asked to provide a proposal or a figure for facilitation, both who have experience around housing conversation and homelessness conversation and equity experience in their facilitation, and would be happy to look at if you have suggestions, any other suggestions. We're not making any decisions yet on that, primarily because we don't know what the cost will be or what the funding available will be at the moment. And so then I guess the big, the kind of pieces that we have talked about are, what is the relationship between the RHC and the HAT? How do we functionally work together in setting priorities and making funding decisions? And then the other big piece we've talked about is a conversation around sort of the need to be both in the intervention world with people in crises and upstream, preventing people from falling into homelessness. Those are the two biggest bodies that I've heard that we need to talk about. And so I just want to provide a little bit of space for folks to brainstorm a little bit about what they'd like to get in that retreat. And then if you're okay with it, Carolina and I will run with Tom and Keely and the other chairs to get a plan together. So what do you think?
I think that works.
And we're a little ahead of schedule. So if you have thoughts or ideas, we can do a little bit of brainstorming right now for 5 or 10 minutes. Danny.
I think this might have been included in what you were saying, but we all have housing action plans to look at for what we work together on within our separate plans.
Good point. Yeah, and that's the driving the upstream part of this too. So good. Okay. Other thoughts?
I don't really have too much to add. I think that sounds like we've covered the bases for some of the most pressing issues between us.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think we need to keep it fairly simple, because the bigger the group, the more complicated it gets and the more slowly things move. So
Kind of the process and relationship part, right? Okay. Any other thoughts?
I was just gonna say, we need to really honor that part.
Okay. Yeah, so to me, that means a lot of time understanding where both groups are coming from, right? And who's there and that kind of thing. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you have thoughts or ideas, sorry, Lenny, are you leaning in?
Nope.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I didn't miss you. So if you have thoughts or ideas, send them to Carolina or I or Tom, and we'll start moving through, and we'll keep you in the loop as we move along. Hopefully by next month, we'll have a little bit of a framework, or at least we'll be able to tell you that we've got a meeting scheduled with the larger group of chairs. So we'll try and do our best. And Tom, maybe you can help us get, maybe inviting those chairs to our existing meeting, if we could, for our agenda setting, and just expanding the length slightly might be the fastest way I could think of, unless one of them has an obstacle in the calendar.
We can do that.
Okay. And then we'll work to get some poll out as soon as we can so we can get the date on people's calendars. Okay. Tom, update us on the technical team work group updates.
Jim, before you start.
Oh, go ahead, Joan.
Yeah, I didn't buzz in quicker.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm just wondering if at the retreat, there's going to be any space for us to talk about our projects or some of the things that we're hoping to do as the RHC, or is this just mainly to figure out how to work together or set up something with HAT?
I think naturally we need to do some of that so that we can know what our work plan is and how it involves HAT. So we'll work to figure that out. It's a good. So thanks for bringing it up the way you did.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Because we want to make sure we're reinventing as we go, right? And getting better. So yeah. Okay.
I apologize. I just missed that. My microphone just kind of like flipped out. Can I get?
Oh, that she suggested that we have some space to talk about what we're going to do as an RHC. So our own work plan.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Tom, now on to the technical team updates.
All right, and I'll ask some of my technical team members to jump in and help me out on this. So definitely had some meetings over the past month to update you on. First is the RHC, the funding work group did meet a couple weeks ago, and really was starting the transition process from the last funding cycle and get ready for the new round. So we spent some time talking about new funding sources that the county will be receiving, including kind of the 1277 new document recording fee funds, which there's still a lot of unknowns about. The county is receiving around $3 million in home ARPA money. So this is from the American Rescue Plan Act under the federal home program, but it has a broader definition of broader allowability. That's not really a word, is it? A broader
It is now.
allowed for eligible activities, including non-congregate shelter that funding can be used for. So we talked a little bit about, as well as 1406, and just kind of starting those conversations. So just had a preliminary conversation to understand our funding sources. We also talked about the affordable housing pipeline. And one of the things the group wants to do is reach out to the affordable housing team and schedule a meeting later this fall, perhaps September, to have a discussion with the affordable housing team around the capital pipeline and discuss ways to kind of strengthen that process and ensure that both groups are on the same page and in sync with kind of what that pipeline will look like going forward. So those were some of the key things that funding work group talked about this month. Anyone who is on that team has anything to add to that meeting? All right. The other one, and I'll let kind of Keith jump in, is the siting work group also had a meeting and spent some time looking at existing sites and had a discussion, and also just talking about the role of the siting work group as it fits in with our permanent supportive housing work group and some of the other work groups, making sure there's not unnecessary overlap and duplication of roles and responsibilities. So I don't know, Keith, on the siting work group, anything you'd like to add on that?
Sure, Tom. Yeah, we did meet last week to continue our discussions, but I think there is a lot of overlap between the permanent supportive housing team and the tech team and the siting team. And it doesn't seem like we need to be doing and devoting all of that activity to these overlapping committees. So I think we concluded that we can put this on hold while the PSH, the Permanent Supportive Housing Team, continues to work and the tech team continues to work. Michael was there, so maybe Michael wants to add just a bit to that as well from his perspective.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Keith. I think the only thing I'd add was that group was sort of formed to do a very technical evaluation of different sites across the county. We've largely completed that, and that's really good data and information that we now have. And now that we've also sort of shifted the approach to the scattered site outreach, that having that group dedicated to evaluate a continued site, like the primary purpose for that group seems to have lapsed a bit. And that with the overlap, it made sense to me too that, we look at consolidating, if only also just because of all the staff time that consumes with having everybody on a potentially redundant meeting.
I guess the one other thing I would add to that is that the need is still high. I got an email today from Ann Freeman in regards to Ensign Road, and they will be rerouting bus service off of Ensign Road as a result of ongoing conflicts there. So we continue to have a need to find an alternative location for Ensign Road. The city has a purchase and sale agreement to acquire the Quality Inn property. We are moving forward with that. It's a 1.4 acre site near Union and Plum. But we're planning on using that site for potentially a mitigation site or relocating the mitigation site from its current location. When we formed that facility 3 years ago, we did it as a temporary facility. And I think 3 years is probably the limit on what is temporary. So we're looking at that site for that purpose, although we haven't made that as a final decision. But, so thank you.
And then the other work group is the Permanent Supportive Housing Work Group, and that's the one that's most active. That group has been meeting about every 2 weeks and is moving forward and developing the strategy that you've requested. And so we'll be presenting that to you formally in September. We've made good progress over these last couple of weeks with a plan of in August, we'll be presenting and going to the funding work group to give them an idea, because we are talking about spending a lot of dollars. We're proposing to spend a lot of dollars, so wanted to make sure that the funding work group is aware of some of the resources that this group is talking about. So we'll be doing that and having a discussion to make sure there's coordination between the funding work group and the Permanent Supportive Housing Work Group. And we're also going to the Affordable Housing Team. So the Housing Action Team's Affordable Housing Team, that was part of the plan to make sure that those providers feel engaged in this process and get their input. So we will have a draft to take to them and engage with them to get their input on what's going to work and what works best for them. So that's our plan for August, and then have a draft to move forward. I will say that that group, the county and city of Lacey have been meeting also on the side around the pursuit, continue to pursue, explore options around the hotel acquisition. So there's been a couple conversations and that continues to move forward. Nothing to publicly share at this point, but know that those conversations have been ongoing and will continue. So that's, I think, unless anyone has, anyone else from the technical team has anything to update. Those are, I think, are the updates for this month.
Well, no one's working hard at all, are they? My goodness, this is a lot of conversation and a lot of really productive work. So thank you everyone involved for keeping those things moving. Any other questions or clarifications for Tom or Keith? Okay. So then that takes us to a communications update. And this is an exciting one because Megan and the team have a logo for us to consider. So Megan, do you want to jump on, and are you here? Oh, Megan's in the attendees. Kelly, can you bring her up?
She's coming up right
Okay,
now.
perfect.
Hello, everyone. So first, I just kind of wanted to give you a quick update on the progress that we're making on our communications plan. So far, we've redesigned and moved the website to under the Board of County Commissioners, so I can manage that website. We've developed one-page write-ups for each of the committees. Those are all available on the website. I worked with Thurston Talk to publish an article focusing on just kind of introducing the council to the community, and that was well received. And then have also sent out 3 news releases to the media, all of which are getting good local coverage. So we're getting some good coverage from the media and getting out there a little bit. And so, as Jim said, we have 2 logo options. Thank you to Donna Feliciano with the City of Lacey. She developed these for us. Kelly, can you share those, please?
Yep, those are coming up moment.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so she developed 2 options for us. One is the more circular looking one, and then the horizontal with the house behind it. Both the communications team and the executive team recommended moving forward with the regional or with the horizontal one, but we wanted to bring both of them forward so that everybody could see both options. And really, we'll just use this as a supporting image for any written communications that we do. It'll go on the website. It'll go on any written documentations. So it's really just supports our message by having a visual to go with what we're doing. So what are your thoughts?
Don't all go at once. Carolyn, go ahead.
I had prior access to this because I meet with the communications team, and I agree. I like the horizontal version better. There are elements of the other ones that are attractive, but I think that, the circle, the names of the participants around the ring is hard to read. And I just think the other is a stronger, simpler image.
Got some thumbs up and some nods to that. Danny?
Megan, thanks so much for your work. I'm so glad that there's communications work happening in tandem with the things that are happening. It's so important. I do like that horizontal one better visually. And I'm just curious, when I look at it, I see, a single family home, and a lot of the homes we're going to be building are going to be different from that. And so, I live in a single family home. A lot of people in the community do, but there's a lot more diverse housing options. And I'm just wondering if it's possible to change it in a way so that it might look like it could be different, a different style of housing, or reflect more styles to feel more inclusive to people.
Okay. We can definitely go back and try that.
Okay. Good thought. Romero?
I guess I'm going to be providing the dissenting perspective. I really like the circular, and I think from my point of view, a logo has to deliver a message, not necessarily with the written words, but with the logo. And the circle itself is encompassing. The circle itself really brings all the stuff together. If you have the pitch of the house, really brings that into a context of inclusiveness. It provides housing, because housing is, in a way, brings the warmth behind that concept. And I believe the inclusiveness of the circle and the pitch of the house, it just delivers that sense without having to read what it is. So that's my dissenting perspective on that one.
Well, and since Megan's gonna go back to Donna for a little bit of a rework anyway, maybe she can take those comments and see what can be worked through. Because I don't disagree with anything you said, but I think for me the issue was the partner names popping. So maybe that's the place to play with it. Anything else?
We talked about it a little bit yesterday. I think agree with Carolyn's comments that the horizontal is cleaner, but I agree with Ramiro's comments too. So yeah, I don't think we feel super strongly though. So.
Well, we're not in a hurry, so but let's not belabor, let's not drag it out either. So if we maybe one more round and we'll make a decision. Okay. Anything else, Megan?
Nope, that was all I had.
Okay, any other questions for Megan? Thank you for helping get the story out, because I think in my experience, that's the biggest the biggest challenge in this work is anyone knowing what the heck we're doing, and often the things we're asking for, or the community's asking for, are often underway and they just don't know. So thank you, Megan, for helping us with that, and the whole communications team. So
welcome.
Okay, so that takes us to the future of our meetings. And so we talked about this at the agenda planning call, and wanted to just check in with the group around whether we should go back to in person, whether we should stay virtual or try to provide a hybrid opportunity. I think that we all three or really all four of the chambers for the commissions and the councils are wired for hybrid or will be. And so I think that is a possibility, but just wanted to check in, with the 4 o'clock hour, what makes the most sense for people as far as, whether they need to get around town to come to this meeting, or if it's just easier to stay remote. Excuse me, one sec. Apologize for that. I think I'd be open to a hybrid model, but would also be, I think it's important that we get together in person a couple times a year too. So I'll just put those out as my thoughts. But what do the other members and staff think? Michael?
I would say hybrid. I think it's like so good to have flexibility so that, staff aren't spending hours out of their day driving to these meetings. And if there are times where we need to telecommute to call in, that we have that ability ourselves, and it increases access to the public who would otherwise have to be there in person and arrange transportation. So I think hybrid is, and since we already are setting up the systems to do that anyway, taking advantage of those systems makes all the sense in the world to me.
Okay. Carolyn?
Well, what Michael said, but today the governor just came out and said indoors we're masked. And I think that is not very conducive to an in-person meeting. So I think we ought to continue with Zoom for now and kind of see where this fifth wave of COVID is taking us. I would be much more comfortable seeing a 70% vaccination rate in Thurston County before going full-time into in-person meetings. And just personally, there's a little bit of a time crunch for me because I have a 6 o'clock board meeting that chases this. So.
Okay. Danny?
I have a 5:30 meeting that chases this, and I love to get that 2-minute bio break in between, much less a 15-minute commute.
Drive, yeah. Well, I do think based on that guidance today that it's particularly hard to hear people because you have to sit close to hear with the mask, and and then harder to get distance with this size of a group to be able to take them off. So I think it makes sense to me if we just stay remote for at least the next 2 or 3 months. And then what I'd like to do though is figure out what our hybrid option will be so we're ready. Whether that's Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, or the county, and then how that will kind of play out. Lacey's been really helping us out, and if that makes sense, we could look at that. But I don't know if Kelly, maybe you and Nicole could talk a little bit about the possibilities between your two organizations first, and see if one fits. With maybe the goal is by the fourth quarter, we would be ready if we feel it's appropriate within the pandemic. Is that cool? Does that seem okay to everyone?
Sure. Okay.
So we'll stay remote through our September meeting. We'll have an in-person retreat, hopefully still though near the beginning of October, and maybe that'll take our October meeting at the same time, but we'll kind of play with the calendar as we move ahead after that. Okay.
I think if we do an in-person retreat, we're going to need a pretty big space to do it in order to meet our.
We'll make sure we have the ability to space and take breaks and some of that kind of stuff. So
that sounds like it's going to be a community center type, maybe space.
Yeah. Does anyone have a big community center that could give us some space in?
I don't know. Kelly, can you check that?
We can check what the availability is at Woodland Creek Community Center.
Yeah, let's get a date and then we can shop around. But I do think that's a good point, Carolyn, to make sure we have the space to distance and still work through it.
Right.
Carolina?
I have a question for the retreat. If we do it in person, will it have to be recorded, and will it have to have the technology capabilities?
I think for the retreat, it's hard to participate remotely. So I would say we could, if that had a recording that was posted later, or if it was just written minutes for a retreat, that would be okay. But we still have to provide access to the public in the in-person venue if we don't have a remote option. So we can work on that logistically. But I like to keep a retreat conversation to people in the room if we can. Joan?
I have a question or a comment. And especially if we're going to do it in a bigger venue, is to make sure that we have really good microphones, and especially if we're going to be speaking through masks, because I've been to retreats where, you know, we just haven't had enough amplification of people's voices, and it's been hard to hear. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out because we're adding a mask to that, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. We have a colleagues masking at the meeting still, and you can't hear them even with the microphone. So I think it's something to consider as we move forward, you know, volumes and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks.
and I don't know if the shields would provide better sound if it wasn't muffling your face. That might be something to consider too, like face shields. I haven't seen that in a microphone yet, so. Okay, well, I think the room that comes to mind that's wired like that is the training room at Tilley Road. So,
But it doesn't have good acoustics there. I've been to many a thing there, and the acoustics aren't very good. So if we're going to go there, you say they have a good sound system or something. I hope that that's something new, something better.
yeah, I guess I don't know for sure, but I thought they had a good sound system. So, but that, yes, we will make sure that we have accessibility for all of our ears as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on meeting locations? Okay. I'm like, what did we forget on the agenda? But everybody's working too hard in between. So is there anything for the good of the order this evening? Romero?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As some of you know, the Thurston County has embarked on this pilot project, the LEAD project, which is the Law Enforcement Assistant Diversion project. And we have already started forming some of the groups that we would like to engage. We have a policy group, and we have also implemented the Community Advisory Board. Is also going to be looking at members of the community. At the last meeting, which just happened this week, the conversation that I brought to the subject to the group was, do we have enough representation from the community, and perhaps some members that can bring value to everything that we're going to be seeing as part of the LEAD pilot project. So housing became part of one of the elements that perhaps we may want to reach out, and the Regional Housing Council came as part of the conversation. So I'm obviously participating in the RHC as well as in the LEAD program. So I'd like to bring this to your attention if there is anybody who would like to participate on the Community Advisory Board of the LEAD program the county is implementing.
Romero, do you see that as like a formal representative of the RHC where they're talking back and, you know, kind of a two-way communication, or really just a volunteer that is also on the RHC?
The latter.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what the meeting frequency and schedules are?
The frequency at this point for this particular advisory board, we're looking once a month for an hour. And at this point, we're either the third Wednesday or the fourth. We're into that process, but it will be once a month.
Okay, maybe I can just contact you privately and see if it
Sounds
would
good.
mesh with my schedule, because I've got a lot of Wednesdays spoken for.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so if you're interested, let Romero know directly. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
Anything else for the good of the order? Carolyn?
Okay, well, I've been getting some information and some nudging to see whether this group might be willing to entertain a motion to urge county commissioners to move forward with the countywide home fund. So in the form of a recommendation to that body. And I realize this puts Carolina in a little bit of an awkward position, then she probably needs not to take part in this conversation, but for the rest of you voting members, just how do you feel about doing that? And is that something we could do quickly or we need to spend some time on? I understand there's time pressures if commissioners, I think, would need to act by October 15th in order for our county to start getting collections by January 1st. And then there are incremental cycles after that. But, you know, if we're going in that direction, I think the sooner that we can start collecting money, the sooner we can put it to good use in our housing programs. So,
Okay.
thoughts? Romero?
Romero and then Carolina.
No, I give the floor to my commissioner.
Go ahead, Ramiro. You're probably going to say, you speak more eloquently at times. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Cox. This particular matter is going to be discussed at the upcoming planning session with the board. It is going to be scheduled for August 13th. That's a Friday. And what I'm going to be working with Tom is I think the board needs to know all the many different funding sources. They really is helping to address this very complex matter. So that conversation is going to occur on the 13th. The home fund is going to be part of that among many other sources. Because based on the conversation that I had with the board, they need to understand what other sources they have or they would have already implemented before they can perhaps take an action on the home fund. So I understand the sense of urgency, and I totally agree with you in terms of the taking an action and then when you start collecting the revenue. But just from my perspective, October 15th may be too rushed for the board to take an action on that. So,
okay.
Commissioner?
I was just going to ask an action. I remember Commissioner Menser at a joint meeting we had with Lacey said that he was hesitant to move forward without the support of Lacey. And so I just wanted to see where Lacey was on this.
Well, my last conversation with our mayor was that he wants to ensure that, you know, big buckets of money are going into permanent supportive housing. He thinks that should be the major thrust for our ARPA funds, for, you know, other funds coming in, and he wants to see some documentation on that. I see Lenny has his hand up.
Go ahead, Lenny.
Yeah, I just want to add from a Lacey perspective, Lacey does not have a position on this as of yet because there's been no discussion or vote from our council as far as taking a position. We may individually have positions on it, but there's no city position that would be official. I myself am opposed, whereas I know Carolyn is, seems to be in support, but there's no position on it from the city.
Rick?
Yeah, this topic did come up briefly in our briefing on the housing action plan as one of the options, and we were looking at scheduling a fuller conversation at a future work session with the city council so they can look at all those options and what this tool could look like.
True. I didn't mean to imply that Lacey has taken a position on this, but I also think that our housing council, is an advisory body, and that we can make recommendations on things without our councils having acted on it. I mean, I think we are capable of doing that. I mean, I don't want to get too far out in front of our city council, but I think I think we ought to look at opportunities and not feel like we have to wait for every jurisdiction to have voted on something in order to make a recommendation to county commissioners. It just.
Michael?
Yeah, I was going to agree with Carolyn that, you know, part of our role here is to be representatives of our council, and that comes with our own personal perspectives for what we think is the correct public policy. And we've had only very brief discussions of the countywide home fund on our city council, but my sort of temperature taking of the room was that, you know, we broadly have recognized that the resources that we have to bring to bear on this problem are insufficient. And I think that some of the feedback we're hearing back from the Permanent Supportive Housing Work Group and some of the stuff that the funding group has articulated to us only reinforce that position, that we need more resources in order to be able to adequately tackle the problem. So, you know, I agree with Carolyn that we can make recommendations, and who knows how long things will take to move from there, but for what it's worth.
Okay. Lenny?
I just want to add that I disagree with that as a process with both Carolyn and Michael. As representatives on interjurisdictional committees, council members represent the council, not their own personal beliefs. So before taking positions, we should have an idea of where our council stands on an issue. That's my personal opinion of that.
Okay, thank you. Carolina?
So I'll abstain from any voting because it does put me in a difficult position. So I'll just put that out there. But my recommendation is that this is just a little bit premature because the county commission is just about to discuss all the funding options. There's a new legislative bill that just came down, 1277. Is that correct, Ramiro? That we're also going to discuss as well on the 13th. I would hope that the RHC would make a recommendation and support it once we've made a decision on which way to go forward. That way it shows, I feel, more strength for the county commission position. So, but that's just me. Of course, the rest of the members can move. I will be abstaining from any vote.
Carolina, can I just ask a clarifying question for what you just said?
Yes.
I probably misunderstood what you said, but what it sounded to me like was that you wanted the commissioners to make a decision and then us to endorse that decision. Is that what you intended?
So no, so for us is basically to, right now we're just going to discuss this meeting on the planning session is just going to be to discuss all the funding options that we have available in regards to housing. So once something gets on our agenda to actually make a decision in support of a specific funding, then I feel like it would be great to have the RHC support in regards to that specific funding, whichever it might be, and it might be the home fund. Did that make sense? Did that make sense? Yes.
I think so. I guess where I am temporally is that, you know, I don't see a recommendation for us being time bound. I mean, it's just there when you're ready to receive it. But, you know, if people aren't comfortable moving today, then, you know, we can save it for another meeting. So I just wanted to raise it because there are people in the community who are really wanting this and really concerned about deadlines. And
So
but I
I'm
also hear
open
what-
to it, and I'll tell you why in a second. I just want to see if Danny or Joan, do you have any additional opinion or comment on the thought?
I agree with Carolyn and with what Michael said. I think if we, well, you know, I mean, we're in touch with our councils. We sort of know what's happening, and Carolyn spoke and said that she'd talked to the mayor. That matters in our city, whether, you know, the mayor feels one way or the other. I don't see anything wrong with putting out a recommendation, and as the county looks at all of the funding things, they know there's a recommendation there for that particular funding. I don't think one has to wait for the other. So I think us being proactive is a good idea.
Danny, anything? Okay. So my thoughts, so I actually agree with all of you. You know, process is something that we need to stick to, you know, sort of in the general person's agreement for how we function. But I also think that it's very rare for any kind of binding votes from a council around their activities on a interjurisdictional. So it's really, you know, you're appointed to represent your city, and the best you can do is go with the temperature check, unless there's a specific request for action. And so my take on this is that we need universally in my conversations with folks from Olympia, the largest priority is to bring more funding to the table so we could build more permanent supportive housing, and not just build it, but operate it long term. And that's where a funding source like the Home Fund countywide would be key. And I think the other piece I would say is we have plenty of plans. All of them call for more permanent supportive housing. And even with all of the funding that's in front of us right now in this unique moment in time, there's not enough. And so I would be open to a motion, but I would also think about it maybe being specific about the funding source, so that it leaves it with the commissioners to bring more money to the table to help us accomplish our goals, whether it's a home fund and or some other source. So that's my opinion, and I'll give a moment here, Carolyn, if you'd like to make a motion, or we can table this conversation for our next meeting.
Romero has his hand
Go ahead,
raised.
Romero. She's yielding to you. So
Thank you. Just to understand if a motion is moving forward, what will the motion be? Because the county, if the board is to exercise that option of the home fund, there's two options. Is whether including all the cities except for the city of Olympia, or just the unincorporated areas of the county to implement this taxation. So if the motion for a recommendation to the board, I will encourage you to be specific as to what that recommendation will be. It's just unincorporated areas of the county, or maybe inclusive of the cities within the county, except for Olympia, because Olympia already has a home fund.
Well, no, I think we definitely want to be inclusive of the cities.
well, let me just throw out that at the staff level and with a couple of my council members, I think we would be very open to bringing our process and our home fund to collaborate with something that's countywide. I can't go much further than that, but Keith, is that a fair statement for me to make as one council member?
Yeah, we're definitely open to that conversation. We're here at the table, every month. We've put our $1,406 on the table and into the pot, and we certainly are open to talking about our home fund dollars as well. So,
okay. Carolyn, anything else you'd like to say this evening?
Well, yeah, I think I'd like to go ahead and offer a motion that the Regional Housing Council recommend to Thurston County Commissioners to pursue every funding opportunity at our disposal, up to and including a countywide home fund, in order to fund permanent supportive housing and other housing needs.
Okay.
Did that capture the spirit?
That makes sense to me. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So a motion and a second, and my understanding, Carolina, you're abstaining from a vote? Okay. Any further discussion amongst the members? Anything from staff that's not clear? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so I will communicate that to the county commissioners, and we'll see what they do. And then Romero, could the RHC members be there for that briefing? Is that possible?
Mr. Chair, that is not a briefing. It's a planning session where the commissioners will have an opportunity to discuss among themselves some of the topics are going to be bringing in front of them. So perhaps there will not be an opportunity. Certainly, anybody can follow via a live stream. We're planning to do a live stream.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, that ate the extra time we saved, but we still, Danny, sorry, go ahead.
I have one more thing for the good of the order. I promise it will not generate as much discussion. Last month, I mentioned that there was going to be a transfer a development rights summit taking place hosted by the county. And there's a save the date out for September 17th, 9 to noon. I'm happy to forward the information along to anybody who's interested, so you can flag that. But, you know, it's getting more density in the areas where we want it while preserving rural farmland and forests. So if you're interested, just let me know and I'll pass along the info.
Okay. Yeah, actually, Danny, can you send that to Nicole and ask her to send it to all of us?
Sure.
Okay. Carrie?
I was just waving my hand as interested as well,
Okay,
but that
cool.
email will get it to me. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Okay, we finished in time for a bio break for those that have a 5:30 meeting. So with that, we'll see you on August 25th. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.